would like to ask now all other panelists to the stage. Those that have not made it to the stage before, I will quickly introduce. I think I'll take the middle position and you get comfortable around me. Starting maybe here from the right, who joined us now on stage is Egbert Franzen. He is the initiator and director of the Pakhuis de Zwijger that Charlotte just presented, but holds numerous other positions, amongst them, as I said before, the cultural intendant of the EU 2016 Arts and Design Program. You are also the initiator of the Amsterdam-based Sustainable Temporary Fab City you just presented. You're a member of the Rotterdam Council of Arts and Culture, member of the Urban Agenda think tank, and a member of the Social Innovation Relay 2016, and a publisher of the magazine New Amsterdam, New Europe. So plenty of things. Matthias, you've met before from the ZKU in Berlin. Here as a curator, artist, researcher in between the fields of arts and urbanism. And now to my right is Lenka. Just get the name properly, Burgerova. I quickly introduced you earlier. You're an architect and a counselor for development and urban planning architecture, and it's important, we talked about earlier, public space in Prague 7. You used to be a professor at the Faculty of Architecture at the Czech Technical University, and you have also worked on several non-profit projects promoting architectural heritage, and you're a member of the Working Group for Education at the Czech Chamber of Architects. So, I'm very happy to sit in the midst of all of you and discuss with the whole audience. I would like to also make very clear, we'll try to give more time to the audience to get involved. Listening to all of your projects, your case studies, your experiences, maybe a few things that unites your work is the method, and maybe also the general approach. In a sense, what I could see is that they all encompass a strongly people-centered approach, a collaborative one, and often even informal approach, on the one hand. On the other hand, also the field of research, the field of investigation, and the field of action, or of operation, namely the how should we put it, the neglected areas, yeah, or the dead angles of urbanism architecture, whether it's the refugee camp or whether it's the town of Newcastle, or it's an urban warehouse, an urban wasteland. This is, in a way, so the approach and the method as well as the subject is what unites all of your approaches. There's many things that we have in common, many things to discuss. I would like to take the inspiration from you, Charlotte, with a picture that you showed of the prison in Amsterdam. That was the idea to kind of host or to bring the refugees there for the moment. And that's maybe a crucial topic for us to discuss here within this context of the conference and migration in cities. What do the arrival spaces for migrants, in particular now for refugees, actually look like? Because these arrival spaces, whether it's the refugee camp or the refugee shelter, or it's the refugee welcome, the kind of shared accommodations, but what are these arrival spaces, and aren't they really the prerequisite for a proper integration into society? The example that you gave is very classic, and it's not for Amsterdam, but it's actually quite common all throughout Europe. By bringing the refugees into that context of a prison is bringing them close to a criminal offender. So starting at that point, how could integration possibly work? So what I'm trying to question with you, and you have a lot of experience with refugee camps as well, what are the actual realities of refugee buildings? It's a very particular construction task, but also very, very particular buildings. So maybe Joanna and Ricardo, you could elaborate a bit on your experiences of these realities, the building realities of refugee camps and arrival spaces. And we need a microphone.
Okay. Like the place where we work, like in Lebanon mainly, the realities are very different in terms of spaces where the refugees are living. So you have like the traditional refugee camp that we all have in mind, we see on Google, on the news, but actually the reality, especially in Lebanon, is way more complex than this. So people are living in buildings. The whole, like, even urban development is changing a lot due to this huge number of refugees coming in the country. You find like very small towns in the agricultural valley where we work that in the last few years have been developed very quickly and in a very different way than before. We ourselves were looking for a place to stay in the region because we live very close to the place where we work. And you see how even the rent, the prices, everything is changing. The urban typologies are changing. So it's very, I would say, hard to give like a specific typology of space where the refugees are living at the moment. Joanna, you want to?
Yeah, I can add to what Ricardo said, is that the case of Lebanon is quite different than any country in Europe. I don't know if many of you know Lebanon, but Lebanon in itself, we have already like our own problems and conflicts, and it's a very small country. As I said in the presentation, 1 out of 4 people is a refugee, and to be able to grasp that in the built environment is a very complex way of explaining where refugees are and how the spaces are formed, because there are also urban refugees. Ricardo spoke of the rural refugees who are living in the Bekaa Valley, and there is one thing that is worth adding, that the case of Lebanon is different because it is not formal camps. It's also informal refugee settlements where an owner, if you own an agricultural land and you can get more revenue by renting it to refugees, you do that. And then there is all of a sudden the agricultural valley is becoming all of a sudden filled with like tents and settlements. And even if like organizations are saying that international organizations are saying that they know of each and every tent where it is located, I hardly doubt it, because it's happening because there's a need, because there's an everyday need for people to be able to live, to have at least some sort of shelter to stay.
Maybe I can extend that question to the whole panel. What we discussed informally before, this also is directed maybe particularly to you, Lenka, and you, Egbert. The questions how existing both legal as well as building regulations can almost be in the way for creating proper arrival spaces, and how this can, what the possibilities are to change. So there's almost as if there's a kind of a need for innovation and informality in these very contested spaces.
In our case in Amsterdam, I'm sure we're going to make it with this prison because our municipality is quite smart to connect with all the creatives in the city. So at this moment, they are already working on special places in the building to make community places of it, to make it a nice and comfortable place. So and that's the way to do it, because what Charlotte says, that it's the country who is working on this kind of places and selecting this kind of places, because they can put a lot of people into it and have a control of it. But now our community in the city is really going to work hard with it, and also the people who Charlotte showed with the creative hubs, all the people are already connected to this. So that's the way to work from the top-down movement, but create a different, completely different atmosphere and connection to the city by all the creatives, by the city makers, by the people who lives in the surroundings of the former prison.
For the moment, in Prague, we don't
If you
have...
speak up a bit louder.
Okay, so in Prague, for the moment, we don't have that many refugees to offer them very special amenities or places to live and stay. So maybe my speech will be a little bit more about generally how the public space should be more accessible for the people of different ages, for the people of different low income or also no income. Because what is really important to us is what was mentioned here, to allow more people to do more things, not only in the public space, but also inside the properties. So I would like to see kind of democratic interventions, which was done, for example, by Jože Plečnik for the Castle of Prague. So to provide much more openness, diversity, and inviting spaces. Generally, we are caring on children, so there are places to play, but sometimes they are done really in a kind of way that everything is prepared. So there is no space for free approach, there is no space for free play. So what makes not only refugees but also people with low income or no income so like a little bit weaker, this does mean that they have no money, for example, to provide their children paid afternoon activities. So for the city, I think for Prague 7, which is really important, is to provide everyone the open and open space, open public space, which has a power to integrate the people, to offer them a place for different opportunities.
Matthias and actually Marcus, I would like to get both of you involved. Marcus, even though there's no migrational background, the system is kind of the same. The methods that are applied are very similar. And I would like to hear both of your experience a bit more, in particular in how do you initiate a project. All of them are very strongly connected to participation, and that goes, I believe, for the refugee situation even more. Participation always is connected to a feeling of ownership, like I participate if it's also part of me. So the strategy, the tactics, both are very similar. So maybe you can talk about your project that you briefly showed, the Zusammenkunft.
Okay, yeah. I mean, basically, it's what you say, participation. I'm also skeptical, like Ricardo and John.
By the way, can you hear as well? Because we have even on
yeah,
stage a bit from.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, like Ricardo and John already said, like it's actually more about empowerment, and this is what we tried in all these different projects that I presented. Philip and I presented this house there statistic. Maybe this is a good example also for your first question about regulation. Because in this particular case, this house, 50,000 square meters on the Alexanderplatz right at the city center, was about to be demolished. And there was no sort of, because of regulation. And then we created sort of an initiative of, let's say, 100 stakeholders, you know, like basically the civil society, that created a pressure on the administrations, which are in a state of emergency, totally overworked, you know, and they cannot handle this anymore. And so what happens, you suddenly have the minds go up, you know, they open for these ideas suddenly, and there's a certain amount of tolerance also. And also they're ready to change regulations in order to, you know, have to deal with this situation. So this is what we're having in Berlin right now, which is the great opportunity, but it's coming from the civil society, because basically the politics, they stay put. You know, it's a really scary situation for them. You know, they are looking at a really big problem, and they don't have any solutions, and the civil society is coming with ideas. So I think this is what's happening at Haus der Statistik, and also in the other kind of prototype projects that we're doing right now, where we have, for example, 2 stories in a kind of abandoned hotel, where suddenly out of the total emergency, they were asking us whether we could place social initiatives and artists into this building to create a mutual learning situation with the refugees who are now placed in this abandoned hotel. they would have never asked us 2 years ago, you know, to help them, you know, to help the municipality to deal with this situation. And this is actually, I think, a good situation for civil society. This is a great opening of civil society activities.
I mean, Renew as a program from the very beginning has been designed around the idea that we don't have much in the way of resources. The seed funding for the program was my credit card, and I don't have a very big credit limit. So we couldn't afford to do a lot of things that involved building anything or changing anything. So a big part of what we designed our systems around was looking for all of the things you don't need to ask permission for. And then we tried to go and do a lot of that, basically. So trying to, as much as possible, work within existing consents and existing frameworks for buildings. If a shop was empty, find someone who wanted to use it as a shop that already fitted the permit for which that was present there, and repeat that process over and over and over again. I think one of the issues around regulation, one of the bigger issues about cities is that if you looked at the state that Newcastle was in 2008, the problem was the people who had capital didn't have any imagination, and the people who have an imagination didn't have any capital. And most of the systems required that you have capital in order to solve problems, in order to be able to get in and do things. So what we wanted to do was set up a set of structures, largely within the existing legal framework, sort of hacking at the way in which the existing framework works, but to make it possible for people to start things or try things or do things without having access to capital. And that's been the principle we've followed through all the way through. And that inherently comes with constraints. It means we can't do a lot of things we would like to do. We can't house anyone in a place that's not approved for housing. We can't change uses of buildings. But despite that, even working within those constraints, it's been possible to seed a huge number of projects.
I don't think you can bend the politics from imagination. Yeah, so I think they can also imaginate many ways how to use the spaces, but sometimes, always there have to be strong communication between what, from bottom up, from up and from the bottom, and you have to meet somewhere, because it's about opportunities. So if there are opportunities and if there are ideas, they have to meet somewhere. And I would say that the very important is to discuss the things and to be open to different solutions. So we had the buildings which were empty. So we simply announced them on the web pages, and everybody could ask and make a project which can be in the building. So. I would say that there's not so simple that there is only imagination by the public society and there is only this nothing the approach I don't know what to do by politicians, and that you have to have also this really open discussion what could be settled and what obstacle, because sometimes what you can do is to help with the administration, for example. You can open some spaces which were closed for years. Yeah? So I think that there have to be very strong communication and very close cooperation.
May I reply? Because I actually like how you addressed it very well, both, and you as well, that for some reason there is still a strong need for a state of emergency, as you said it, for most institutional actors to allow for civil society to come up with solutions. We've seen this in the city of Amsterdam for the last couple of years, because our beginning of mapping all the bottom-up initiatives basically started when the real estate crisis hit in the city of Amsterdam in 2008, and all of a sudden the government didn't have the money anymore, and they had to have the strong support of the city makers to actually allow for a lot of redevelopment projects to follow on, to provide housing, to provide basic welfare activities. And now again, the refugee crisis is also highlighting how there's a strong need. The city of Athens has 480 civil society organizations at the moment working to adapt to the refugee crisis in the city of Athens alone. But the funny thing is that more question also to my co-panelists, why is there always a need for an emergency situation to finally understand how fruitful and how interesting it could be to collaborate with civil society and to actually get rid of the dichotomy between top-down and bottom-up, but actually work together, because I think that's a very funny thing. Now in Amsterdam we see that the big money is slowly returning in especially like spatial developments, and all of a sudden it's like, thank you for this great program in the break, but now we continue with business as usual. We just make new master plans, we create new blueprints, and we bring in the big capital again, and civil society or the city makers are shifted aside again, while there is an intrinsic value in these collaborations. So I think that's a very crucial thing to realize.
Unfortunately, Berlin is also a very sad case study for this, what you're saying. At the late 90s, early 0 years, you would have a lot of interim use of empty spaces in Berlin. This created the whole brand of the sort of creative, mad Berlin. And after, all this brand was established, the owners, whoever the owners were, said, thank you very much, now you leave and we take over. Because now we're gonna, now it's time to make the money. And so actually it's really a question also of ownership. Ownership of land, ownership of buildings, and communal ownership. And a city like Berlin gave up of most of its communal assets in the 90s. And now they're regretting it, it's too late now. But this is actually what is causing in Berlin also the fact that people are pushed out of the city if they're sort of precarious, if they're a marginalized group.
And I mean, that's what basically Saskia was telling us in the morning.
Exactly, yeah.
As well about, now London was the case study. Berlin is a very good example for that in a way, but that's also just the classical story of every city. Eventually that happens, no? We just had more time to play. Sarcastically arguing, you could say. But I think that the point is, and I think that's very interesting, what we've learned, and also what earlier Mike Kimmelman said, is that it is right in the middle where things can happen, in between the bottom up and the top down, where things can actually be activated. What I'm thinking, again in the back of the mind, the rival spaces. Once again, we're talking about migration, cities, what does it do? And not only urban migration from the countryside, rural migration, but really a lot of people coming to the city without a home. That a project like yours, Marcus, is actually also a blueprint how it could work for arrival spaces for refugees in a city. Because the key thing is, A, that they get a space, and you said it before, and I said it before, that they can somewhat own, participate, where they can grow in. So I don't know if you agree or not agree, but I think this is basically an urban development proposal that can also work for the current migration crisis in the refugee buildings. That is still a very new task, for all the governments. There's a lot of people, and we're not really experienced.
I think I definitely agree, because I think for very often the refugees arriving to our cities or to Europe or whatsoever are in particular seen as subjects of a big crisis, and they are waiting for somebody to allowing them to integrate into society. But there are also a lot of people they're full of competences, so you should actually allow them the physical space to be able to address those competences and show those competences. So there is a strong need for allowing them to integrate on the one hand, but also just acknowledging that they are not subjects of a huge migration flow, but that there are people, and that there are people with a lot of talents and ideas to bring the city further as well.
Yeah. One thing is when we put a tag on the people, like when you say the refugees, okay, we want to welcome refugees, and we tend to forget, as you were saying, that they are people at the end of the day, and that we need to accept the fact that some are fleeing a war, some don't have a place to return to, and we need to think of how. That's why inclusive design is important. We need to think of ways of how our role, as you said, as a mediator between the bottom up and top down approaches, our role as designer come in between, as a facilitator, as a way to use the inclusive design to bring the people together and not just like categorize like a refugee or a Muslim or a Christian or like he's from Lebanon, I don't know, like we don't know at this age, at this time that we live in, like how do you define like being an Arab, or how do you define being like coming from a certain ethnic group? Like I think it's important and something that we really didn't like speak of today, like in its like really like essence detail about identity.
I really agree. I think that it's about the people who are seeking to feel at home again. And that's the definition. So maybe in 20 years we can be the ones who will seek for home somewhere else. Because before or even after the Second World War started, many Europeans were seeking for a new home in Africa, which is not that known. Yeah. So actually we can be in a couple of years or dozen of years in the same situation. So we should behave like we would like to be treated. We should behave to the people in a manner how we would like to be treated to be in the same situation.
Yeah, I would like to add a comment about a panel that, in the morning where we were talking about Tel Aviv and how we didn't mention the Palestinian refugees. And I wanted to ask the question to the panelists, like how could we like speak about migration and refugee crisis and speak about inclusion without thinking about historically and thinking about more on the bigger umbrella and the reasons, and without thinking about actually the other people who actually left their homes and have no home to return to. And I think like when we want to tackle issues, we need to think of the whole loop of the migration. And it's not something new. It's just now that it's a hot topic because we all want to do something about it. But it existed since like humanity, I think, existed. It's there, and it's just now that we cannot, it's good to tackle bit by bit, but it's also when you're tackling the bits to think of the history and the bigger picture and actually the person who is affected.
Yes, for sure. I think we all couldn't agree more, no? And from my perception of the first panel and the first half of the day, I think we're kind of focalizing a bit more. It was more in a wider sociological sense, geopolitical one, where we're now narrowing down more to actually like real side projects, no? So to speak, that give us more an idea, a grasp of how things could look like. So that's, for example, also in your case, very interesting to see what are these spaces, and how can they be done, etc. And I'm also wondering what the possibilities or the necessity of experimentation here is, and whether these like on-site projects, like you do, they're kind of like in a way also spatial laboratories, no? And how important they are, or what the possibilities of them are. Matthias, yesterday we spoke of the term Reallabor, the German Reallabor, the German term of like basically a reality laboratory that is more understood. Like we don't really have a solution, but we're trying to get there with these kind of spatial laboratories. Or I guess the Fab City is another one of those. I guess your project are too. They're not in an end. It's not a solution to something. It's an attempt there. So. How important do you see that? By the way, I think we can also, I mean, it's a big dialogue. Open it really to the public, and I would love this light to go down so we can all see you, and continue the dialogue together. Sorry, but Matthias, please start.
Yeah, I think in order to bridge somehow the bottom-up sort of movements and the top-down planning, you have to, or like me coming more from the bottom-up, we have to think of these things that we do, the Reallabore. We have to develop these things to a point where we can talk about prototypes, because this then becomes a language that maybe the top-down planning understands. So, and I think like Refugees Welcome is a good example, you know, from doing it, you know, at home yourself. They created a kind of platform for this, you know, and created something that goes beyond their personal kind of engagement, and which became a prototype. And I think this is actually a good way to approach this design and to bridge kind of these two necessities.
But let's get this light out and get everyone lit, so to speak, and then we continue. Nonetheless, please, Charlotte.
Well, I totally agree with that. I think one of the things that we also presented to the ministers recently was the idea that like experimentation should always be a default for making cities, because this is where like the small scale innovative solutions can be prototyped with, and they may not always be able to be upscaled or whatever, because I think that's very dangerous also to think of small scale initiatives in terms of how to replicate or how to upscale them, scale them up, because their intrinsic value may lie in their small scale approach. But on the other hand, you can learn a lot from it, from like the prototyping, the testing you've been doing, and then moving into what you can learn from it and transform that into new governance structures, transform that into policy making, and also interpret it as a policy recommendation, basically, what is being done. I think that's very important. I think that's also why lots of bureaucratic top-down processes often fail to provide at least like fast solutions, because they don't allow for like prototyping and experimentation.
Is in a way, now I'd like to open it to discussion. In a way, top down is like the big tank, big ship that moves very slowly, while the bottom up are more ship, have a greater flexibility and can move faster. But please, now you've been listening to us, and I think you all have something on your mind. There's the first question. The microphone is coming.
Hi, thank you very much for amazing and very positive and inspiring presentations. I want to ask if you could each and every one of you say something that was limiting you and or that you wanted to achieve but you couldn't achieve from your perspective and from your, I guess, level of involvement and accountability and responsibility. What you would have wanted to do but you couldn't.
Very good question, by the way.
Yeah, it links to what we were just saying. Like for us, like for example, a big limitation is still the fact that our approach, that basically including participation every time in every single project, takes a lot of time, as you probably know. And at the moment, this time is not like. It's time that we need to invest and we want to invest, but it's very hard sometimes to communicate this approach to donors or partners, etc. Like sometimes people ask us like, why don't you just scale up, as we were saying, like scale up your project, just, you know, you developed a project, it worked, you developed a space, it worked, just scale it up to other areas, but that's not what we want to work and what we believe in. So every time we start from zero in a way, and this is like requiring a lot of energies, very little money, as I was saying in the presentation, because the market still doesn't offer, and this is like a big limitation. Yeah, so in our work, I would say this is a big limit at the moment.
Lenke.
So from my point of view, as for the city, for Prague 7, the biggest limit to help the people in need properly is the number of of the apartments owned by the city, because for the moment we have 2.5% of the total amount of apartments, which is really low. If the crisis, if the migrant crisis, or if there would be much more migrants in Prague, I'm afraid that we wouldn't have almost anything to offer them, because we have the people in need and we have to help somehow all of them. So we have young families, single mothers, and so we don't have the property, as you mark. Then sometimes it's a question of property, whether the city has enough flats or enough apartments to offer. And then there is a question: what's the best help? You as a city, because the people are asking of shelter, to have a shelter, to have a privacy as well, and the families are different, and you as a city, you have to find an appropriate way how to help them individually. So to treat the families individually, I think that this is a challenge, and to have enough space to offer them a shelter.
Maybe Charlotte and Egbert?
Yeah, maybe either one of us. Should I? Yeah.
Wait, you can.
Well, there's one thing I think there's a lot of possibilities, but you always have to work on personal relations, because it's all about trust. So building trust with the people of the municipality, with the newcomers in the city, with the people of the neighborhoods. It's all about trusting each other and to be reliable. Reliable. So and that takes some time. So you have to start small, make it bigger every time. But in other situations, keep it small, learning from each other, not scale it up, but take the principles you learn about with you to another place, to another project, to another neighborhood. But it's all about building on relations and get to know each other and know what everybody's possibilities are worth, and to work together with.
Can I just take that question and turn it around? The question was about
the
things
limitations
that you wanted to do but can't. Renew came from an insight which really involved flipping that question over, because for years I had ideas for projects I wanted to do, or arguments of what I thought someone else should do, and lots of people in the city had things that they wished that should happen but weren't happening. And instead of asking that question, we turned it around and said, what are all the things we can do and can make easy, and how do we just go and do that? And I think that's a good question, and I think it's a question we often don't ask enough. Like, not what's the ideal thing that can happen here that I would do if I had lots of money and owned all the buildings and had all the resources, but what is the easy thing I can do here? What's the thing I can do tomorrow and the next day and the day after that? And so our approach very much came from thinking in that way. Having said that, I've got a list as long as your arm of things I'd love to be able to do if I had more money or more resources or more time, but that's not very helpful. I'd rather concentrate on the things I can do.
I love how you say that. It's completely, I think that's what most of these types of projects have in common, just start. And there's one thing though we face a lot, that there's about a 3 to 5 year period that people tend to think like that, and at some point they need to be able to at least allow for more sustainable financing, or to be able to at least pay for their evening dinner and their rent, because that's what most, as much as I hate to say it, most projects end up with a financing question, like how to actually sustain my initiative, because the 3 to 5 year period is how long like voluntary energy lasts, and then there's a tipping point. So that's a very important.
So I mean, for our project, we've received funding from the city and from the state that allows us to keep that running. But for the individual projects that we support, I mean, ultimately, they either survive or they don't. And 70 of them have, but that means 150 haven't. And for all of those reasons. But I tend to look at the process as one of planting lots and lots and lots and lots of seeds and just seeing what grows. It's not, I can't guarantee what will grow. But if you don't plant anything, nothing will grow.
Matthias, time is unfortunately already running out, as I've been told, but Matthias, please.
Yeah, just adding maybe to this, we as an artist collective, this is what we do every day. We ask ourselves, what can we do? And then we just claim certain things. Like I think if people 5 years ago, if we told people we are going to turn a train station into the center, they would have said, no, you're an artist collective, forget it. And then 2 years later, we actually did it. And now the Haus der Statistik is also a complete mad, like to claim, okay, this house can be turned into a house for marginalized groups and can be done within the next 2 years. People would have told us complete madness, and now it's about to happen. So I think it's actually a good approach, you know, just to go into the process and being naive also, because if you're not naive, you're not gonna, you know, you're not gonna start it anyway, and then see where regulation is stopping you, or where maybe the financial aspect is stopping you, and then you have to find other ways to get around this.
Naive and believe.
So naive and believe as closing statements for this panel discussion. In a way, I think, I don't know if you said it earlier, it's like, why do these kind of crises, or the one that we are in right now, have to happen for people to realize? Generally speaking, we are like a crisis-driven species. We only react to crisis. And crisis, if we go etymologically to the old Greek, means decision. So crisis is the moment of decision, the moment where you have to make a decision. So maybe we can take this into account, and thank you all for your attention. Thank you all for participating.